Okay. Greetings, brother. Everybody. I'm going to give it a few minutes, let some people walk in, get things going. Hoping to blow some minds. I know I know you've heard me talk about fish farming before. We're going to show you what the fish farming is all about. We're going to show you what kind of access to the land that they really have. And be sure to feel free to share the link, get some other people in here if you want, guys. I really appreciate the sharing so we can get some people in here and get this shared so they'll share it too. The quicker it gets shared and the more people that are in it when it gets shared, the better concept people or better faith people have in it. I don't know how to do that. Unless you have some way of getting in that room on another device and sharing the screen from this. I don't know. Could hop on another device and hop in that room and send the link. But in the meantime, we're just going to hang out a couple more minutes. If you find a way to do that, that's fine by me. I don't know what's going on in Art's room, but everybody's welcome here. You know me, I'm the host here. I just mute you out. Because I'm not here to argue with anybody anymore. I'm going to be pointing out the plain facts as they're written in their record. And if nobody can disprove them, then they have two options. Either admit to them or change them. And if you change them, you got to change them for the better. So they're kind of stuck. So anyway, let's see here. Don't need sound or video. All right. Well, before we get started, I want to thank you for joining us. Hope everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. You know I always do. And so in a moment of peace, thank you for joining me. I hope everybody's ready to learn about fishing. Fish farming. Let me pull up. Excuse me. Okay. Under 7 U.S. Code 1922, persons eligible for real estate loans. Now, Title 7 of the U.S. Code is the Department of Agricultural Credit. This is where all the loans extend from. And what it is they've already got what they call premises, real property that have been acquired through supposed real estate loans by persons eligible for real estate loans. And those are urban societies. This is all managed through the Housing and Urban Development, HUD. And what we've got here is an agricultural credit, because what they have to do in order to expand the city boundaries is they have to acquire agricultural land. In order to do that, they must first condemn the land if they can't purchase it or trade it. Pure and simple. And we'll see this. The secretary may make and insure loans under this subchapter to farmers and ranchers in the United States and to farm cooperatives and private domestic corporations, partnerships, joint operations, trusts, limited liability companies, and such other legal entities as the secretary considers appropriate that are controlled by farmers and ranchers. Okay, that's telling us the farmers and ranchers are the ones that control this stuff. Who's that, guys? And engaged primarily and directly in farming or ranching in the United States, subject to the conditions specified in this section. Now, in regards to farming, we are talking about agricultural credit, farm credits, or ranching, also an agricultural credit, but done as a commodity on stocks and rather than land. So let's look at farmers. They've got a blue line highlighted, and it says farmer. Under 7 U.S.C. 1991 A1, the term farmer includes, which means it excludes all else, a person, means the legal entity customer, who is engaged in or who, with assistance afforded under this chapter, intends to engage in fish farming. So that shows the intent of fish farming. And what is farming? The term farming shall be deemed to include, which means excludes all else, fish farming. So when you're out there farming your cornfield, they don't consider that farming. Amazing. That is ranching. Okay, next one. Land condemnation by rural development. See, in order for them to acquire land, like I said, says if the rural development, say somebody needs a piece of property and there's none listed in town and they want to go out to the farmlands and get one, they have to go through the rural development. Otherwise, you go through HUD, Housing and Urban Development within the city, rural development outside of the city, attempts to acquire real property at the request of the governor through purchase or trade and is unable to do so. So anyone that wants to purchase rural property, it's telling us they have to go through the government and at the governor's or through the governor and as at request of the governor to the rural development. Only then can they acquire real property through a purchase or a trade. Or rural development may take action to condemn the real property by the following procedures. A request for condemnation shall be submitted by the Rural Development State Director to the Undersecretary for Rural Development, Washington, D.C. So here we see a Rural Development Director speaking at the state level, going to the federal level. So we have to get federal acquisition. Title 48, CFR 52.212-5, Federal Acquisitions Regulations. Contract terms and conditions required to implement statutes or executive orders - commercial item at the request of the governor of the appropriate state. A copy of the governor's request for rural development or real property condemnation and the state attorney general's opinion that state and local government condemnation authority is lacking. It's telling you right there, the state has no authority to condemn any land. None. None. They have to go through the rural development in order to condemn any further land other than land that's already been supposedly condemned. Shall be attached to the rural development state director's request. So the governor has to attach it to the state director's request, which is the rural development director, state director, and the governor have to attach theirs and then send it to the federal rural director under secretary at Washington, D.C. That's the process. No other way, folks. No other way. Real property condemned by rural development shall be transferred to the requesting state by a quitclaim deed for a price equal to the fair market value of real property in accordance with terms of a negotiated real property transfer agreement. It means a legally binding grant entered into between CCC and MAP applicant, setting forth the terms and conditions to implement approved activities under the MAP program, including any subsequent amendments to such agreement. United States Civilian Conservation Corps. Well, we'll find that some other time. Anyway, applicant setting forth, I don't know, the terms and conditions to implement approved activities under the MAP program, including any subsequent amendments to such agreement. So when we're going through and trying to do this land conservation or land stewardship certificate, we have the ability to amend this any subsequent agreements. And what we're going to do is prove that that quitclaim is no good. After obtaining title to real property and prior to transfer to the state, the property shall be managed by the rural development in accordance with Part 1955, subpart B of this chapter. Rural development may not condemn Indian trust land or U.S. forest land. Okay. The next part, this is a good one here. It says definitions. When used in this subchapter, the term lands beneath navigable waters, remember 18 U.S.C. 7, special maritime territorial jurisdiction. And it means all lands within the boundaries of each of the respective states which are covered by non-tidal waters that were navigable under the laws of the United States at the time such state became a member of the Union. Okay? Or, I love this one here, acquires sovereignty over such lands and waters thereafter. Remember this part, acquired sovereignty over such lands and waters thereafter, up to the ordinary high water mark, not beyond it, up to, over such lands and waters. So the land is covered by water. It is still land beneath the navigable waters. It doesn't dry. Or acquired sovereignty over such lands and water thereafter up to the ordinary high water mark, not above it, as heretofore or hereafter modified by accretion, erosion, and reliction. You know what erosion is, right? Erosion is the movement of the soil off of the land by wind or water or other forces. The natural recession of water in some parts of the country may also be due to climatic or geographical changes. Reliction is when land is exposed due to the natural process that results in the withdrawal of water, below high tide mark, such as when a river channel dries up or a lake dries up. That's reliction. Accretion is the building up of soil along the riverbanks from erosion. Oops, there we go. A process of growth or increase, typically by the gradual accumulation of additional layers or matter. So when a river's going this way and it's got a curve in it, it's going to dig out this side and it's going to continuously build up this side, making that curve might eventually start out as a slow curve, but will eventually turn into a big curve. And eventually, through some processes of flooding, will create an oxbow or a circle or an inside lake where the other river channel continues on its natural flow because of the flood, thereby cutting off an old channel. This is why we have a lot of lakes like that around river channels, because it's showing the change of the river channels as it was before. All lands permanently or periodically covered by tidal waters up to but not above the line of mean high tide and seaward, not inward, seaward to a line 3 geographical miles distant from the coast. The term boundaries includes the seaward boundaries of a state or its boundaries in the Gulf of Mexico or any of the Great Lakes as they existed at the time such state became a member of the Union. Or as heretofore approved by the Congress, or as extended or confirmed pursuant to section 1312 of this title. But in no event shall the term boundaries or the term lands beneath navigable waters be interpreted as extending from the coastline more than 3 geographical miles. Seaward boundaries of states. This is the best one. Oops. When we read this one, it says, and I want everybody to pay attention here real close, because we are talking about lands under navigable waters. The terms grantees and lessees include means it excludes all else, but then it says without limiting the generality thereof. So why even put include? This is how ridiculous this stuff is. All political subdivisions, municipalities, public and private corporations, and other persons holding grants or leases from a state, not to a state, from a state, or from its predecessor sovereign. Where was that sovereignty one? Anyway, that's what we're looking at now. We're looking at sovereignty again. Predecessor sovereign, if legally validated. Isaiah, what is it? Not Isaiah, Leviticus 25, verses 23 and 24 talk about the land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine, ye are strangers and sojourners with me, and I grant ye the land in redemption thereof. That's your claim. No land patent needed, folks. I assure you. Any grantee or lessee that is holding a grant or lessee from a state is a false deed, a false patent, a false everything. 2, lands beneath navigable waters. So all of these lands that are under grants and leases and land patents that are on dry land are not affected by these laws whatsoever. This is only for lands under navigable waters. That is the extent of their special maritime territorial jurisdiction. If such grants or leases were issued in accordance with the Constitution, statutes, and decisions of the courts of the state in which such lands are situated. Now, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Don't we have a state attorney general? Governor and state attorney general opinion that state and local government condemnation authority is lacking. So if that is lacking, if such grants or leases were issued in accordance with the Constitution, statutes, and decisions of the courts of the state, if they don't have authority to condemn, then how do they have the authority to issue such grants? They can't possibly be issued from them. They must first be issued from a greater power to the state to then be issued as a grant from the state to lands beneath navigable waters. Nothing more, nothing less. In which lands are situated or of its predecessor sovereign. There we go again. If they're saying that they have this ability to govern lands beneath navigable waters, and they're recognizing or its predecessor sovereign, which is sovereign over the lands under navigable waters, as well as the lands above navigable waters, as well as the water themselves, as well as the air. How's that for stuffing that water down their throat? They have no jurisdiction in the air and they have no jurisdiction on the land because they're limited to the lands beneath the navigable waters. Therefore, they don't even really have jurisdiction to the water, do they? Yeah, we got to give them that. Got to give them the, because you're if you have possession of the land, you have possession of all above and all below. So we have to give them that. But all they can use it for is fish farming. So acquired lands means lands which the United States obtained by deed, through purchase or gift, or through condemnation proceedings. Let me ask you, folks, if the state has to go to the United States to condemn the land, how do they receive it? Through condemnation. By giving it to themselves, by condemning it themselves, and then granting it to the state as their own condemnation, simply because the state wanted them to condemn it so they could then turn around and grant it to them. I find that kind of ridiculous. Including lands previously disposed of under the public land laws, including the mining laws. Previously disposed of would be your local communities that are already established, that are based on mining all of the commodities on the rural lands around them, whether they be above the soil or below the soil. Because they can't very well mine under the water, but they can fish in it. I mean, it's pretty silly to think that somebody like myself wouldn't eventually read this and start exposing it for what it is. Plain language is telling you exactly the only way they can provide a real estate loan is to a farmer or a rancher. A rancher is the one that's done under previous acquisitions for mining rights, and the farmer is the one that's fish farming for water in condemned lands, because it can't be used as land. It's got to be used for its water. So party in interest means a party who is or will be vested with any interest under the lease as defined in paragraph L of this section, or I of this section. L, I guess, which is the next section. No one is a sole party in interest with respect to an application, because you have to apply to another, and therefore there are two parties at minimum. Offer, competitive bid, or lease in which any other party has an interest. We're going to supersede this with this here. Interest means ownership in a lease or prospective lease. The thing we own is the legal entity customer, by patent observance that it is in the drawing of our name. No matter how you want to style it, I am the absolute beneficial owner. No matter how you want to style it, no one else has the right to authorize that name's use except myself, in accordance with a number regarding the legal entity customer. Now, as the legal entity customer, that is the obligor, and I am the beneficial owner with superior rights, period. I don't even have to hold any kind of card. It's just blatantly that observable. In a lease or prospective lease of all or a portion of the record title, working interest, operating rights, overriding royalty, payments out of the production, carried interests, net profit share, or similar instrument for participation in the benefit derived from a lease. An interest may be created by direct or indirect ownership, including options. I have an option of exceptions. I take exception. I'll discuss that later, some other time. Interest does not mean stock ownership, stock holding, or stock control in an application, offer, competitive bid, or lease, except for purposes of acreage limitations in 3101.2 of this title and qualifications of leases or lessees in subpart 3102 of this title. And this is just acreage limitations. They don't have a right to limit the acreages. It's a matter of being reasonable. And here we see the Bureau means the Bureau of Land Management, and service means the Minerals Management Services. So all these HUD programs, housing and urban development, is based on services, whereas the forests and your special maritime jurisdiction is Bureau of Land Management, your postmaster, Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, things like that. But it's all going to involve that HUD because that's where they all work. They all work in the SUD in the city, the urban area. So think about this stuff and remember, acquisition of lands or interest in lands by purchase or condemnation general. 43 CFR 2130. Notice when I try to pull it up under the Cornell site, it does not come up. I have to go through here and it tells me the Cornell site does not have it. So we're using this one, but this is where it's at. And it tells us acquisition of lands or interest in lands by purchase or condemnation general. The Act of October 21st, 1970, 16 U.S.C. 460Y. Establishment boundaries. Look at this, national parks conservation. See, we're talking about environmental protection and conservation laws, and we'll talk about this again at a later time. So in their conservation and environmental protection laws, they provide for the establishment of the King Range National Conservation Area and authorize the Secretary of the Interior to acquire by purchase any land or interest in land within the area pursuant to the Act, meaning the King Range National Conservation Area. Guess what, folks? That's on the edge of California. That's the Pacific Coast, not the Gulf of Mexico or the Great Lakes. So the rest of this tells us how to provide for the acquisition of lands, because it explains here the simple contract used in this King Range National Conservation Area. Again, it's a simple contract. I'm going to post these links in the chat section. Open the board up. Questions, everybody, please. No questions, nothing. Do I need to break a smaller part?
Hi, Keith. Hi, I have a question. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I was late. I was reading about the 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
I apologize. So what's the PDF that you were reading? Is it possible I could get a copy of that?
The one I just got done reading, that is
Yeah.
CFR, let me see here. It's 43 CFR chapter 2,
43 CFR chapter 2.
subpart 2130. I'm going to post a copy of I'm going to post the link in the chat section.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So as we see, you know, when you go back and review this video, you'll see that what they do is they ping pong the purchase or trade or condemnation, and they can't, if they can't purchase or trade for the rural property for HUD development, then they have to go through the rural development at the federal level in Washington, D.C. And it's got to be a statement by the state attorney general and the governor both, claiming that the state doesn't have acquisition rights through condemnation and they can't purchase it or trade it. So they have to go to the federal government for a request from them to condemn the land. Well, that very thing of the federal government condemning the land and then turning around and then granting that land as condemned land back to the state is the fraud. They can't assert that the federal government has authority to condemn the land. It can only be condemned if it's submerged by water and unusable for other things.
So, Keith, is this how they're seeding land then? Is it through the EPA and the forestry?
Yep, they're doing.
Is this how they're
That's
able
why they're
to
pushing.
do that?
Wait till I show you how the electroplating works. Let me see if I can find it in here. See if this is where I found it.
Well, it's interesting too. When I was reading the zonal improvement plan of Agenda 21, and their focus on marshland, how extensive it is, and
Yeah.
reclaiming public land. Yeah, under that. Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the link or the definition, and we've only got a couple minutes left here, but here's the definition for public domain in there. Trying to find, what was it? No. Fair means fair market value and not equity. Anyway, I'll find it. It describes somewhere in here a word, but I can't remember what it was. And when you click on the word for definition, it goes to electroplating. So when you replace it in there, they're acquiring everything for electroplating. And that's what the aluminum shit in the air and all the fucking shit is. They're trying to electroplate everything.
So, like fried fish for Fridays, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Wow.
And it's all because they think they have possessory rights of navigable land or lands under navigable waters. And yet they're professing they own premises on dry land. That's a little above the high tide mark there, buddy.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, at one point I remember Brian talking about how Canada they consider navigable waters.
Yep.
The whole country of Canada. I've never really quite figured out. I haven't drawn the link between that yet, but
we're finding it. We're finding it. Anyway, we're out, folks.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me. I'll be back on schedule Monday night with the reconciling the master trust account. Remember, if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. God bless y'all. Love you.
Thanks, brother.
Hey, thanks, kid. Take care, bud.
Love you, brother.
Best to all.